Hello everybody, welcome back to my stream, part 2, after lunch. Worked the first half of the morning on this pizza guy that I've been working on for a few days now, probably day 5 on the pizza guy. The pizza kind of just happened as it needs to happen. I feel like I've got a lot of different things happening. A lot of birds going on. This whole thing kind of feels like a bird. Like this is a bird beak with 2 eyes. Then this over here kind of feels like a bird with a tail down here. And then this is kind of like a bird head as well there. A lot of bird heads. This part's scraped off. It's an old painting. Thanks for the likes already. Feel free to ask any questions that you may have in the chat, or giving me topics to launch off about. Gotta clean my brushes here in a minute. Yeah, of course I like talking about whatever comes up. And I appreciate all of y'all who've watched my videos over the years. If you could be so kind to give me a like, it's always appreciated. Helps keep me, I run on likes. That's all I care about, just the likes. Really? That was a joke, actually. Okay. But I'm gonna clean my palette out first. Get back into the second half of this. If anybody's got any questions about my work, painting in general, if you're working on something and it's not working out, let me know. Just here as my open studio hours, which is pretty common for professors generally to have a time when students can come in and ask questions, usually about their work and the assignments, but it's kind of my version. It's also just called live streaming. Pretty much all it is. Been doing it on Twitch for a few months now. You can see the link down in the description for that. What is happening with this white? Weird. Just gotta cover up this area a little bit first before I begin. I had to scrape down some of the texture on this piece because it just became too bumpy. It was interfering. A lot of my paintings have quite a bit of texture on them because I overpaint my paintings so many times. America is beginning to wake up. Afternoon in Europe. In the future, in the East. Remember I wrote a screenplay about, I found it the other day. About 6 years ago, I wrote a screenplay for a movie I wanted to shoot with my friend called Bitcoin Time Machine. And it was going to be a movie about people going back in time to buy Bitcoin and secure it and all that. Now I think of it, it was like, that was 6 years ago. And now people are still like, man, if I would have just bought some Bitcoin 6 years ago. Never did make it. I wanted to make it on 360-degree video for some unknown reason. Just because I still haven't seen any movie made in that format. I'm kind of surprised. That nobody's made a 360-degree video for VR. Seems like it would be perfect. Somebody's got to do the first like good one. There's going to be a good one. Not like Weekend at Bernie's 2, 360 degrees. Or maybe that's, you know, since nobody did it, maybe they just need to make Weekend at Bernie's 3 in 360 degrees. That'd probably be better. Some epic film. If anybody has any artists' suggestions, people I should look at, feel free to write in the chat who you're looking at. Who do you like? Who inspires your work? Of course, I've got the whole Painting Like series that I do as well. And I like for that series to focus generally on artists who are dead. Just because if you do people that are living, might as well just watch them. They're probably making videos. But yeah, if you got any suggestions for painting like videos, write those in the comments or let me know who you're looking at, who inspires your work. This purple is so easy to blend. It's one thing when you're starting off painting as well that often students discover that some colors simply blend easier than other colors. They're just like better for blending. This purple just wants to be blended very subtly. some of my favorite art movies. I made a lot of different films about painters. I think it's because paint is just naturally, paint and film kind of have a affinity for one another in a certain way. They're both kind of antiquated mediums in a degree. There's probably no reason, I'm sure somebody could disagree, but you can make images with a camera, or you can make images digitally. But for some reason, we still like smearing around crushed up rocks with a stick. And film people are kind of needlessly nostalgic for their medium as well. But anyway, regardless, there's been a lot of movies made about different painters. My top one is a movie called Basquiat. I think you could find it probably on YouTube here for rental. And it's about Jean-Michel Basquiat. And when I saw it for the first time, I was from North Dakota, which anybody who knows America knows that North Dakota is kind of the least, most people don't know anything about it. They've never met, there's like a joke that, they'll be like, North Dakota doesn't exist. Have you ever met anybody from North Dakota? No. So, pretty rural state, needless to say. I didn't have the opportunity to go to the Met growing up. I wouldn't go into see like an El Greco, and I guess I would. I went to travel to New York when I was still quite young. But seeing Basquiat certainly introduced me to a whole different way of painting and thinking. And of course, Basquiat's still quite popular today. In my class that I teach, students can choose an artist, and then they can emulate that artist's techniques and processes and methods of creating. And a lot of people still choose Basquiat. He's still really appealing to a lot of people. The energy, it's kind of this energy of youth, exuberance. But it also kind of feels like extremely expressionistic. He did a series of paintings with Andy Warhol, actually. And in the movie, David Bowie plays Andy Warhol. And he does an awesome job. He's a great Andy. But I rewatched it again. Benicio del Toro's in it. Watched it again not too long ago. Probably about a year ago. And there's a lot of key points just about the art world in general in that movie that come up. The movie was made by a painter as well. Julian Schnabel directed it. He's a painter. He's got famous for his broken plate paintings, where he painted on all these broken plates. but he did a lot of the paintings for the movie too, as far as I'm aware. And the reproductions of the paintings are really nice. So if you like to watch paint being splashed around, or a movie about a painter, that'd be a good suggestion for one to check out. If you're just joining, thanks for watching. And these are my studio hours. Just a glimpse into my studio. If you got any questions, feel free to write them in the chat. This is just a peek inside my daily life in the studio. And an open time for questions from y'all. Thanks for sticking around to watch. If you do get a chance to like, it's appreciated. If you're just tuning in, it's my studio hours. Feel free to ask me any questions that you have about my work or questions about painting in general. I can do my best to help out. Currently just putting some shadows on these feathery scale things here. Got the time lapses on the right. Some of my other videos. Been streaming a lot on Twitch lately. I thought, why not come on over to YouTube, say hi. If you are enjoying the stream, give me a like, I appreciate that. Or let me know who you're looking at, who you'd like to see a painting like video about in the comments. If you're just joining, this is my open studio hours. Just a glimpse into my studio, my practice, how I make paintings. These are all painted in oils. Using cad red, cad yellow, titanium white, Mars black, phthalo blue, and a purple. I don't know what purple I got, probably dioxazine purple or something like that. I did do the lady on the horse. Hilda. Woman with horse. You might have clicked on it in the thumbnail. That's the thumbnail image I've got. It's up on my wall right now. It's pretty psychedelic. But, yeah. You can check out my Instagram and see if that's the painting you're talking about. Yep, that's me. I was doing some simple themes, you know? Woman with horse, that's simple. I did person with cat as well. I like using simple themes. Whenever students are wondering what they should do, they don't know what to paint about. Thank you, I appreciate it. When they don't know what to paint, I just say, just paint like a simple, just a theme. You know, like writers always have prompts. You know, so it's like, make a short story about the guy who buys airplane glue for children. Or, you know what I mean? You have a prompt, you have a situation. That can be fun for painting too. But it can also be fun just to do a simple theme like a woman with horse. It's like Picasso paintings. Just look at Picasso's titles and do one of those paintings. That's pretty much, that's a good trick. Not really a trick, but good technique. But I appreciate it, Hilda. Yeah, a lot of my paintings are kind of about the digital world and the real world colliding together. Paint is a very analog medium. So it acts, and so one of the great things about paint is just how direct it is. You know, when you paint, you're painting fairly directly onto a surface. I know it sounds really straightforward, but and I know that there are Cintiq tablets which are nice and replicate things very nicely. But there's something about just the directness of painting onto a canvas or onto a piece of panel. The color manipulation is so direct. Thickness, which is, you know, something that's often lost in digital work. Just the thickness and the thinness of the paint, the texture of the underpainting. So you're asking, Hilda, when I started it, was it the vision of what I had? No, I allow my paintings to unfold as I paint them, which is probably the wrong way. No, it's the right way to paint for me. I have an idea. So I do have an idea. I want to paint a woman with horse. This is a pretty standard portrait here. I remember before somebody asked me to explain my work, which is kind of odd because, you know, nowadays you can just have somebody open up their phone and be like, oh, here it is. But somebody asked me to explain my work, and I said, it was like in a work setting, like an employment work setting, and they were like, what type of work do you do, Jeremiah? And I was like, oh, I make pretty traditional oil portrait paintings. And one of my colleagues was like, what are you talking about? She's gonna think that you're making like paintings of people with their puppies. Like, I don't know. They are pretty traditional. I mean, this is kind of how a portrait is supposed to fit in a square. It has eyes. It has a mouth. So I'm trying to figure out how this piece of pizza got into the mix. I actually scraped it and then it was a triangle. Well, you can see maybe in the time lapse in the top right, you can see what it looked like there. The pizza just revealed itself to me. It's like Michelangelo when he looks at the stone and you could see the sculpture in the stone already there. And all he had to do was coax it out of the stone. That was pretty much the same way with this pizza. This pizza just revealed itself to me. Maybe I should start a religion of the pizza monster. But it needed more pizza, which is a good tip for any painting. You know, if it's missing something, just add food. It can be any type of food. But yeah, if it's missing something, just add some food to it. I've got a lot of different types of food. And food kind of makes for interesting textures always. Stuff like that too. Yes, traditional. It's pretty traditional. I mean, Hilda, come on. It's got eyes. Hair. Hair that gets darker in shadows and lighter in lights. Right? What else do you need? I always tell my daughter like that I'm doing something completely different. So if I have like an image on my phone that I'm working on or looking at, I'll tell her, I'll be like, I've been working on this painting of a giraffe. Can you give me some tips? And she'll be like, that doesn't look like a giraffe. Like, what? What do you mean? And she's so nice that she's like, okay, I guess I can kind of see it. Kids are always, or at least my kid is pretty good about that. Kids can also be brutally honest too. One time she was giving me tips on stuff for lucid dreaming, how to lucid dream. She gave me all these tips for that too. Yeah, Hilda, it's it's got. Actually, the colors are pretty subdued. The blue is probably the most electric, contemporary color. That phthalo blue. One of my buddies, he's always like, why do you keep painting with that phthalo blue? Like, it's super powerful color. It's really cheap too. Never run out of phthalo blue. I run out of cad yellow for whatever reason. Cad yellow and white I use up really fast. And cad yellow is pretty strong too. So if you're just joining, thank you for coming through. Appreciate it. If you got any questions or suggestions for artists that you're looking at, I always like checking out new artists. Write those down in the comments. Let other people know. Who are you looking at? Who do you suggest other people look at? Don't say yourself. This is an exercise. Yeah, phthalo blue is really strong. Generally, back in the day, they would use ultramarine blue. And I think ultramarine blue is also one of the first oil paint colors. They found some Buddhist oil paintings in caves in Afghanistan. I think they go back around 6th century. So around 1400 years. And then of course like Jan van Eyck and Dutch oil painting would do other stuff with it later on. That stuff precedes the Renaissance. But anyway, yeah, phthalo blue is, I think it's a dye. I don't think it's, well, maybe I don't think, ultramarine, that's a real thing, you know? Ultramarine's an actual rock, you can, like a pigment. I think phthalo is probably artificially created, just as like a dye or a color through some chemical process. But, you know, they used chemical processes back in the day as well to, when you look at some of these older books about like alchemy and painting and stuff like that, there would be all sorts of suggestions, like holding a certain rock in a knife, putting it on a knife and holding it in a fire, that sort of thing. I mean, ultramarine tends to be, or Hilda's asking the greener side. I think ultramarine tends to be a little bit more purple, and it's got some red in it. It's warmer, and phthalo is really, really cold. You know, it's a really cold blue, and so that's a pretty big difference between phthalo blue and ultramarine blue. Of course, you got cobalt, which is a real mineral as well. That's in all of our phones. We need cobalt. It's one of those technological minerals. And of course, cobalt would be used as a cicative, which just makes stuff dry faster. So there'd be different cobalt mediums. You could add a couple drops to. I have a video on it as well. But you can just add a couple drops of it to your linseed oil. You kind of immediately have drying linseed oil that dries as you paint with it. But yeah, it's used in cell phones. It's really in demand. It's from Africa. Maybe there's other cobalt deposits throughout the world, but coltan, that's another, it's not used as a pigment, but another one of those technological minerals. It's kind of crazy to think of when you're into Dune, for whatever reason. Dune, I've been watching that movie my entire life. I finally watched it like open with Wikipedia open while I was watching it. So I could figure out what was actually going on in it. But of course, you know, the spice melange. Spice is that essentially mineral that, or substance I guess you could call it, that makes time travel possible, that everybody wants in the universe. But cobalt is still widely available, but you do need it. I suppose there's some efforts to recycle stuff too, which are good. I'm going to go about 40 more minutes before I have to pack up. On a pretty strict schedule here at my studio. So I've got a child at home that needs playing and, well, interaction and exercise, getting outside. I have to get outside and walk every day. Get into nature. But if you're just joining, these are my open studio hours. Just a peek inside my studio. If you got any questions, feel free to ask in the chat. Feel free to suggest artists for people to look into. I can make a couple suggestions to start things off. And maybe today's artist of the day would be Danica Lundy. Look at Danica Lundy's paintings. She's a really phenomenal painter. Just in the way she treats the figure and the amount of narrative she gets into her paintings, I just love. She's a good one to check out. So Hilda's asking, is this a personal work or work for pleasure? That's a good question. So, that's the good thing about being a painter, is you get to be a jerk. And you're like, this is my work. Yeah, this is what I do. I make paintings. I get to say what they look like. If I want pizza in it, I put some pizza in it. And I'm represented by a gallery called GM Pietro Gallery in Connecticut. And yeah, you could say this is my work. I also do education. So I'm teaching currently teaching through the University of Colorado, Boulder. Teaching 2 classes there online, which have gone really well. Have a lot of students, but I love working with students. Had great meetings yesterday, in fact. Actually, yesterday I have 70 students online, but we have these meeting times as well where they can come and ask me stuff about their homework. And yesterday I was talking to a student and I was telling them I thought they were doing Jean-Michel Basquiat for their project. And Jean-Michel Basquiat, look up his paintings. So I thought they were doing Jean-Michel Basquiat, and I got them mixed up, and the student was doing Degas. And I was telling this student, I was like, you should just be like more vigorous in your mark making and paint on garbage, like go into the garbage and get some pizza boxes and rip them apart and make drawings on them and then paste them onto your paintings and make big areas of paint. And I was like giving all this advice for Jean-Michel Basquiat, and the student was doing Degas. She was just kind of looking at me like, what are you talking about? Like I should paint on pizza boxes if I want to be like Degas? And then I realized like, oh, this is the wrong artist, wrong suggestion. So Hilda's asking, I'm trying really hard to break away and find new directions in traditional painting. I would suggest, I know this sounds like a plug, but I would go to my Instagram, my painting course one, and on Instagram, it should be in the description, actually. If it's not there, it's just instagram.com/Oko Academy. And that's my artist mentorship program that I started. But on that Instagram, I actually have compiled a lot of new painters that I'm looking at in my stories at the top. So I have a section that's only portraits. I have a section that's only landscape painting. I have a section that's only abstract painting. I have a section that's more like digital kind of, not digital, actual digital painting, but that's more painting that looks, it's kind of like pulling from the digital world, some of that aesthetic and bringing it into painting. So I've put up hundreds of different examples, and I started using that as my stories because I'd always find new artists just through discussions and these sort of things with students, or students would tell me I'm a new artist I should check out. And that's always good. If a student tells me, then I can be like, oh, this is something they're already looking at. because there's so much, you know, so much new painting going on, which is cool. Not one of those people that needs painting to just be for me. Thanks, Hilda. Yeah, I make it super, I make it really, really broad because I want my students to find what they like, you know? So I have comic book artists in there and concept designers and all the way to Kati Kolvitz and Allison Summers and all my favorites. I realized like most of my favorite painters are women for some unknown reason, but Lola Gill, Allison Summers, Danica Lundy, Inka Essenhigh, Lisa Yuskavage, oof, Nicole Eisenman. I could go on. So many good painters. But I think the most important thing, if you're trying to like kind of break new ground with painting, is often to just get into a practice of doing it. Kind of force yourself into that practice of painting every day. And hopefully through that practice of just painting every day, Dwayne Kaiser, he's a fun one to look at. For just painting every day. He does these paintings of different things, just different little knickknacks around his house. And for a while he was doing one every day and then selling it on eBay. This is back in like 2007, 2006, probably before that actually, but 2005 or so. And I started doing it too. I actually became known with this whole painting a day movement, even though my paintings don't look anything like it, or you know, what most of the people were doing in the painting a day thing were stuff around their house, or maybe they do a landscape painting, or it was all pretty traditional stuff. And yeah, I started doing that too around 2005 or so, just making a painting every day. And if you really force yourself to do it, now my paintings need to dry. Like the way I paint, it like literally needs to dry in order for me to put the next layer on. So my paintings always take more than one day. I thought about going back to it, but if you do that every day, you're gonna see some things begin to emerge, hopefully, as you get more practice. You get more miles with the paintbrush, you could say. Yeah, it is kind of conceptual. Well, paintings should say something, I think. It is a form of communication at the end of the day. People are always trying to figure out, what do I want to say? Well, you don't need to say anything. You don't have to say something big and smart and complicated. You can make paintings about your cats. David Hockney has a whole series of paintings of his dog. He's a real life painter's painter, probably one of the most famous painters living today. Yeah, when painters die, their work does go up in value. I'm sure there's a movie waiting to be made about that. Somebody who nurtures a painter for years. It'd be a good short story. Somebody's probably written something similar to it. Then they kill him off. They collect all their work and then kill off the painter so they can make a bunch of money. Can make for an interesting story. I've been listening to a lot of not podcasts. I've been listening to a lot of short stories lately. Just people reading short stories. I wonder if anybody knows of a podcast where it's somebody just reading stories. I know there's Myths and Legends. That's kind of a fun one. Listen to a couple of those where it's just a person reading kind of his interpretation of these ancient myths and legends. That can be kind of fun to listen to while you're painting. Distract yourself a little bit from what you're doing. I think can be helpful from time to time. The French Whisperer. I do not know the French Whisperer. What is it? Is it like the Dog Whisperer? The Painting Whisperer would be cool. That would be a good video series of a person who just goes and whispers to people about how to make better paintings. Oh, the French Whisperer for a podcast. Okay, cool. I'll check that out. Yeah, I like listening to podcasts when I paint. I guess that's kind of why the whole long form podcasting thing got popular in a certain way, is because so many people have these jobs that they have to work on for hours and hours. Maybe they're, welding, or they're in an office, or they're in their car, or whatever. But it's kind of an anomaly in this age of it used to be like everything should be faster, and Twitter, and everybody was complaining like that the media and entertainment is just being turned into these little sound bites, and I'm sure that's true to a certain extent. But at the same time, somewhere out of that bubbled up long form podcasting, and people starting to listen to 3-hour podcasts. Before, people would be like, what are you talking about? You listen to a comedian talking to somebody in the UFC for 3.5 hours? What is wrong with you? No, it's pretty normal. But there was a need for it. I mean, you can just say more. And you can't really hide behind sound bites, I suppose, in a long form podcast or in a long form format. I suppose this is kind of a long form format as well. These live streaming is a product of that too. So if anybody's got any questions, comments, this is open studio hours, feel free to ask. I'll try to answer the best I can. Do I actually remember that and digest the podcast? I have a very simple technique I use. It's called a notebook and a pencil. So if I hear something, I do write it down. And yeah, I was listening to BBC has a series called Perspectives, which is all about painters. It's this guy, Waldemir, I can't remember his last name, but his name is Waldemir. He's got a podcast called Art by Waldy, I think, or something like that. But BBC, he's got a great documentary on Gauguin that I'd recommend. It's all free up on YouTube. Check those out. And I was listening to a lot of those while I was painting, and I'd find myself often stopping, and I'd just write down a couple notes, and then I will actually photograph my notes and put them on my blog. But I'm a dork like that. I like lists and notes, and I do know that a lot of times information just kind of vanishes. But then again, I'm not watching. I like This American Life, if you know that. Uh, it's a radio show, but they have a podcast of it as well. So I like stories. So a lot of times I don't need to write stuff down. But I will. If I'm watching something about art, I'll write it down so I don't forget it. Yeah, BBC's got a lot of awesome documentaries. All of Frontline as well. Frontline is really good. I don't know if you can watch those outside of the US, but Frontline documentaries tend to be really amazing as well. I recently watched that, what was it called? My Friend the Octopus or something, My Teacher the Octopus, My Octopus Teacher or something like that on Netflix. That was alright. Just about a guy and his relationship with this octopus that he goes to visit. But it's a documentary. I didn't realize octopi don't live that long. But yeah, there's a lot of great art documentaries. American Visions. If you can find American Visions, Robert Hughes documentaries, I highly suggest those. American Visions is awesome. I think it's one of my favorites. It's like a seminar on the entire history of American art. So if you get a chance to find it somewhere, there's a couple, maybe there's one episode on YouTube or something. Came out in the 90s. He made it for public broadcasting in the US, I think. But yeah, American Visions is great documentary. Robert Hughes, I love him. Grew up watching that stuff. Had it on, I still have it. I watched it this summer, I put it in. Thanks for sticking around, watching. If you're new, please give a like, show your support for the channel. If you got any questions or comments, write them down in the chat. It's just a glimpse into my studio and my working process as I work on this portrait, this melting pizza person. If you have any idea of what your favorite pizza is, I never tried the pineapple pizza. I've gotten into many contentious arguments over the years, being an American living in Europe, about what pizza is. People get pretty upset. But I've looked into, I mean, you can look into the history of pizza. Obviously, Italy is very important in what we know pizza as. Nobody's saying that they aren't. But there's different types of pizzas in the world. That's all I'm saying. There's different pizzas. I like, I like Chicago deep dish pizza. Big crust. It's like a piece of lasagna on a plate. I like the New York style stuff too. It's the thin crust, but it's got to be a little crispy. In Europe, I don't know. I hope they don't kick me out of Europe for saying this, but just don't like the pizza. I know there's good mozzarella. I know it's sacrilege to say, but. And then generally most people are like, well, you probably like Pizza Hut. And yes, I do like Pizza Hut. But I've eaten a lot of good mom and pop shop places when I was living in Chicago. Giordano's was the place near us. It's a pretty legendary pizza place in the US, and man, you'd get a big deep dish from Giordano's, go in with your friends. We'd have 4 people, chip in for one pizza, and you'd each have to pay like $14. I know Pizza Hut it's obviously, it doesn't count, but I'm saying I can't eat Pizza Hut. But yeah, Giordano's is like actual pizza. It's like actual good pizza. But yeah, you'd have to pay probably like $60 for a large Giordano's pizza. But it's big, It's not like a little miniature pizza. I don't know with the size requirements, but it's a really huge pizza, and you can only eat like 2 pieces max of that pizza because it's so much cheese and it's so good. You're always taking pizza home. But I know Pizza Hut doesn't count as pizza, but I don't mind Pizza Hut. I can eat Pizza Hut. I can eat the pizzas that you make in your oven, whatever those are called. The ones you make at home. Not every day. I understand that there's different levels of pizza-ness, but you'll take the pizza challenge. Pizza Hut, I had, well, I was living in Europe for so long, I didn't come back to the US for like 8 years or something, and one of my friends got 3 different pizzas for me. When I came back, there was a pizza party, and they ordered pizzas from 3 different spots, just so I could try all the different types. There was like one, the vegan pizza, I knew, I was like, there's something wrong with this. I knew there was something wrong with the vegan one that they got. They didn't trick me on that. But there was one, I think they got a Domino's. One of them was like a Domino's. It was cut into squares. And then they had, I think they must have had 4 different types of pizzas. There was a ton of different pizzas. Or maybe they got a couple different pizzas from the nice place. They got an expensive, like, nice pizza with like real mozzarella and all that. That was good. But there was like a Domino's that was just squares. And I was like, this is the best pizza. And they're like, that's like Domino's. I was like, really? Oh well. Guess my years in Europe didn't help my palate. The chili flakes are key. Pepperoni and olives, you can't go wrong. Those onions, when you cut those onions up, you get those little. I should put some onions on this, eh? Yeah, you can get those. Get those onions, little onion circles. Those are yum. Super yummy. Homemade pizza is good too. I like homemade pizza. It's not. I mean, it doesn't taste like real pizza, but you can kind of control the consistency of the crust a little bit more and make it a little bit thicker. It's good stuff too. Yeah, the vegan cheese, I don't know. I've never been fooled by it. I had the vegan burger though, and I gotta say that was pretty good. Vegan burger worked. Apparently those aren't very healthy for you. Those Boker burgers and stuff like that, they're like full of salt, but I have had a good veggie burger. Sometimes I actually kind of prefer veggie burgers. Right. Pizza Hut rectangular pizzas. Yeah. Bringing me back. That's good stuff. Yeah, Bigfoot. What? And then they had like the Noid. I think that was Domino's. Domino's had the Noid, who was like a mascot for. I think he was like trying to steal. He was like the Hamburglar of pizza or something. If he was like trying to steal pizza or something, can't remember. Yeah, you could get the square pan, cook it in your oven. I was at a bar in Colorado, and it was actually a really good idea. They just had Red Baron, you know those Red Baron pizzas. They're like the cheapest ones. They're like $2 for a frozen pizza. And there was a bar. They had a karaoke night. Oh man, what was it called? Outback. I think it was called the Outback Saloon in Boulder. And you could just get a Red Baron pizza. They just warm it up, basically in a microwave. But it was good, and you drink more beer if you have that pizza. You paid maybe $6 for it or something. So they weren't like making money on the pizza necessarily. It's probably just to get you to drink more. But yeah, if you got a Red Baron pizza, whole thing, you're gonna keep drinking beer. They had free popcorn there too. So they're hooked into the free food. It was one of the last places I went before everything went south. Did karaoke. Big fan of karaoke. I like karaoke because you're not supposed to be too good at karaoke. Like if somebody comes in and they're like really good, you're like, all right, come on now. This isn't like your personal concert time here. Like you're supposed to be kind of bad at karaoke. It's part of the point. Yeah, the pea protein, I think that's where it's at. Those new ones that I got were good. They got them all over now. Another good way to do it is you can take just beans and fry them up, basically. If that kind of makes sense, put some butter in a fry pan and just cook up a bunch of beans. Squash them with a squishing device, and then you can make them into patties and just fry those patties up. That can be really good too. Simple way to like make your own burgers just with black beans or something like that. Add some onions to it, a little bit of garlic. You're good to go. Thanks for everyone for sticking around. Throw out a couple likes if you're feeling it. I might have another day on this. I only got about 10 more minutes and I gotta check out. Because I have other obligations. To leave my studio. It's sad. Yeah, I think they got one at Burger King's. Burger King's the big one, the Impossible Burger. I think that's the favorite. I got my dad that one and didn't tell him, and he just ate it, like totally thought it was a burger. Had no idea, and it was fake. Yeah, baking them. I've done that. Yeah, totally. I've done that too. You just bake the patties. The bean patties, those are good too, yeah. I'm a terrible cook. Like, I'm not good at cooking. I don't want to come off like I know what I'm doing. But I've done a couple things in my day. Not the top chef. I used to do this thing called Food Not Bombs, which was where you just feed people in the park. My buddy did it, who was a DJ. And we just go to the park. For some reason, he just started doing it. And because he didn't like fit the stereotype really of the people that when Food Not Bombs, I still like Food Not Bombs, but when I see people doing it, I kind of think of him as being this kind of activist-y type or something like that. And so we would go over to his place and all help with the cooking. So basically, I was like a prep cook for Food Not Bombs. Bean cookies, no, bean patties. You can bake the patties instead of frying them up. You can take the beans, mash them up in your pan with butter, and then take that mashed bean mush, and you can bake it in the oven. Yeah, yeah, you can use them in sandwiches too. Yeah. Like little bits. They're like little fake kind of meat bits. Chickpeas work too. Then when I came to Prague, my buddy here was French, and he would cook people food. We'd be out drinking, and then sometimes he'd be like, "Oh, let's go to my place and eat. I'm hungry," because I don't know. He was used to maybe he ate later in the day in France or something. And all of a sudden we were all like, "What? This is amazing!" Like he would have like butter and onion and pasta, and it I don't know. It would just be so good. And we were all blown away, and my buddy was renting this apartment out as a studio. This is back in the day in Prague where you could find an apartment for $300 a month in a nice location. And now it'd be triple that. And he actually ended up starting a business in this. It was called U jednoho pokoje, which means at one table. And the way it worked would be you would just send him a text message, and you'd say like, "Hey, I've got 3 people. Can you make dinner for us?" And his prices would be, obviously more than a normal restaurant because you're like eating in somebody's house essentially. But you'd go there, and then somebody did an article on him, and he was called the mystery chef because I think it's not totally legal to like feed people and act like your house is a restaurant. So like the local media did a story on him about the mystery chef and all this, and they didn't put out any of his details because they didn't want him to get in trouble. But everybody started wondering like, who's the mystery chef? And so people wanted to do it, and he got really popular. And so he was like booked, like a week in advance sometimes. If you wanted a table, you'd have to like book him a week in advance, and he started charging a lot more money, and because he was just such a good cook. It was just him. He did everything. Cleaned the dishes, brought the food out. Even after you were eating, he'd come out and just sit with you and be French, essentially. And yeah, now he owns 2 restaurants in Lyon, in France now. One is called Hemingway's in Lyon. So if you're ever there, you can check that out. Tell Julien that Jeremiah says hi. I just saw him a couple of years ago, actually. We caught up. Yeah, it's probably, I mean, it's all totally legal now. He's got like a real legal restaurant, but I think if you're feeding people, I mean, with Food Not Bombs, there are laws about even giving away food. People have been arrested for giving homeless people food before. Some places have really weird laws about that. But we always just said it was a picnic. Like, there's a free picnic in the park. Anybody who wants to come can come. We just give all the food away. The trick was, we went to the supermarket, and the amount of food that is thrown away in America is no joke. And it's pretty intense. And so we went to the supermarkets and we just told them, we're like, hey, we're from Food Not Bombs. And anybody can be in Food Not Bombs, you know, it's not like you have to sign up or something. And so we're like, hey, we're Food Not Bombs, we feed people in the park on the weekends. Can you like not throw your food away and just put it in a box? And we were getting, I'm not joking, at the high point we would get three shopping carts full of food, just packed full of food, vegetables. You know, one week we got like 3 boxes of bananas. We just had like, you know, it's probably like $200 worth of bananas. So we made all this banana bread with it. But yeah, the amount of vegetables we got was pretty amazing. And so we made a lot of soups with the vegetables. A lot of them are just ugly. That's a thing that happens. I don't know if it happens as much anymore. I think I saw an article that even some places are starting to institute ugly food supermarkets. So like all the food that's like too ugly for Safeway, it'll go to like an ugly food Safeway. I don't know if people are that particular about, I suppose everybody kind of looks and they're like, I don't know about this avocado. I don't know. And they just don't buy it. But I think there's been a couple places that just started doing ugly food, like the Rejects, probably in like Belgium or something. Civilized place. Nice. Well, I think I'm going to continue on this. I don't think I'm done. I still feel like it needs something, but I've gotta get going. Thought I'd try streaming here today instead of streaming on Twitch, and I think I'm gonna keep doing it. It's a shame that I have to Thanks. I'm trying to Angeluv. it's a tough one to say, but thank you. I appreciate it. It's getting, it's coming. Needs a little work. Thanks a lot for sticking around. I appreciate it. And yeah, go check out my Instagram if you want to keep up with my work. Or I'll probably be back tomorrow with more streaming. Thanks a lot for watching. Angie loves drum and bass. Drum and bass. No, DMB. Dave Matthews Band. Gotcha. I'm with it now. Classic. Dave Matthews Band. That's awesome. Nice. I'm a Ween person myself. I like Ween in terms of all those bands. Even though Ween is quite different than Dave Matthews Band, isn't it? Anyway, thanks a lot for watching. Yeah, if you're sticking around tomorrow, you can get an update and see what happens with this pizza portrait. Talk to you soon. Ciao.